Imagine a being so powerful, so feared, they literally slay gods. Yet they weep. What could bring an entity of such cosmic destruction to their knees? And more importantly, who would dare offer comfort? Prepare to have your understanding of power, despair, and compassion completely redefined. In the beginning, there was only silence between the stars, an ancient, endless quiet that civilizations mistook for peace. But then came the God-Slayer. No mortal tongue remembered the name they once had. Across galaxies, the being was known only by titles whispered in dread: the devourer of pantheons, the end that walks, the one before whom even light trembles. Where they tread, suns dimmed, constellations lost their shape, and the songs of creation went silent. To glimpse the God-Slayer was to witness the undoing of divine order itself. Their form was not bound by one shape or species. To some, they appeared as a colossal being made of burning nebulae, eyes like collapsing stars. To others, a shadow that walked between dimensions, made of anti-light, consuming every trace of reality it touched. No one knew their origin, only that wherever the gods gathered, praying to their own omnipotence, the God-Slayer arrived to prove it false. Empires that had worshipped their celestial guardians for eons saw them fall in moments. Seraphs with wings woven from solar winds screamed as those same wings were torn from the heavens. Titans whose hearts beat in rhythm with planetary cores found their life force extinguished like candle flames. The God-Slayer did not kill for pleasure, nor for conquest. It was as if they fulfilled a cosmic inevitability. The universe had written a rule, and they were its execution. And yet, amid their legend, whispers spoke of one thing stranger than their wrath: their silence. The God-Slayer never spoke. Not once. They annihilated pantheons, toppled worlds, silenced prayers, but no word, no laughter, no roar ever escaped them. The gods screamed. The God-Slayer simply was, a paradox of fury and stillness. When the Seventh Celestial War broke out, the last of the Divine Alliance assembled on the edge of reality, in the Shattered Veil, a place where time itself cracked like broken glass. Armies of gods stood side by side, their forms radiant and terrifying. The sky was filled with 1,000 suns, each a deity burning in defiance, and then, in the center of that holy storm, they came. Reality twisted to announce their arrival. The vacuum screamed, galaxies folded inward, an existence bent under their gravity. The God-Slayer stepped forward, wearing a cloak woven from the remnants of broken time. In one hand, they carried a blade shaped from a dying universe, a weapon so vast and ancient it hummed with the grief of creation itself. The gods struck first. They unleashed creation fire, storms of judgment, rivers of pure divinity. Each blow that landed could unmake galaxies. Yet none even scratched the surface of the God-Slayer's being. They walked through it all, silent, implacable, inevitable. When the battle ended, there were no gods left to worship, no heavens left to look up to. The divine thrones floated empty, drifting through the void like abandoned monuments to arrogance. Only one presence remained, standing amid the debris of eternity, the God-Slayer, bathed in the quiet glow of 1,000 dying stars. It was said that after that day, the universe itself began to whisper differently. Where prayers once rose to the heavens, now silence ruled. Mortal minds could not remember the gods' names, their stories, their faces. All that lingered was an echo, an ache where faith used to live. People called it evolution. Others, tragedy. But one truth remained. The God-Slayer had not just destroyed gods, they had killed belief itself. Yet even legends wear thin. For eons, the God-Slayer wandered through the cosmic ruins they had created. Planets turned cold in their shadow. Moons cracked and drifted away like scattered bones. They never stopped, never rested, never faltered. But something unseen began to change. Something subtle, small, almost human. When the last star of the Valith cluster died, its light flickered across the God-Slayer's armor, revealing something no one had ever seen before: tears. Slow, luminous trails of liquid starlight running down the surface of a being that was supposed to feel nothing. The void around them rippled as if confused by this contradiction. Why would a destroyer of gods weep? What could possibly bring such an entity, one that had undone creation itself, to sorrow? Perhaps it was the silence, the unbearable, unending silence of a universe emptied by their own hands. No prayers, no songs, no defiance, only quiet. The kind that gnawed at even the mightiest soul, the kind that made immortality feel like punishment. And in that endless quiet, for the first time, the God-Slayer trembled. Across the stars, ancient watchers who had survived hidden in the dark saw it. The impossible. The being who had unmade gods had finally broken. No blade, no army, no divine fury had ever brought them down. It was something far smaller, far softer, the weight of their own existence. They fell to their knees amid the wreckage of galaxies, and the sound of their sorrow rippled through the cosmos like thunder rolling through eternity. And somewhere, on a distant, forgotten world, a human felt it. They did not know why, but they looked up at the stars that night, their heart heavy with an emotion they couldn't name. A cosmic ache, a whisper in their soul. A sense that somewhere out there, something infinite was crying. That was the moment destiny stirred. The legend of the God-Slayer was not over. It was merely changing shape. The universe had never been so quiet. Once the cosmos thrummed with divinity, stars hummed with prayers, galaxies spun to the rhythm of worship, and the infinite dark between them carried whispers of gods both kind and cruel. But now, there was only the hush of aftermath, the sound of eternity trying to remember what it had lost. In that quiet, the God-Slayer drifted. They did not walk now. There was nowhere left to go. The ground beneath their feet, wherever they chose to stand, crumbled into dust that refused to form new life. They had walked through the heart of creation, and creation itself had grown afraid. Worlds refused to grow where their shadow fell. Time stuttered when they paused too long. And still, they wandered, haunted, aimless, searching for something they could not name. Planets long abandoned by gods had begun to die in strange ways. Oceans lost their tides. Winds forgot how to move. Even the laws of physics weakened like old bones. The universe had been woven by divine will. With that will gone, everything began to fray. It was not merely that gods were dead, it was that the fabric of existence was unraveling without them. And yet, in the very center of that cosmic unraveling, the God-Slayer remained unscathed. They floated above a dying world whose sun flickered weakly like a candle in its final breath. The planet had been home to a proud civilization once, a people who worshipped light itself. Now their great temples lay cracked and empty. The colossal statues of their gods, beautiful, radiant beings, had fallen long ago, their faces eroded by time and the silence that followed. The God-Slayer walked among those ruins. Every step they took sent faint ripples through the dust, echoes of power they no longer cared to wield. Their weapon, a blade forged from the bones of a collapsed universe, dragged behind them, cutting through stone as easily as through air. Around them, the air shimmered faintly with memories. The dying planet remembered prayers once offered. Echoes of ancient chants flickered like dying stars, intangible, half there. Voices that once praised, begged, and cursed their gods now murmured only fragments. Save us. Hear us. Why have you gone? The God-Slayer stopped. For the first time in uncounted ages, they raised their head to the dim sky. The stars above were thinning, constellations unraveling into chaos. It was not rage that stirred within them this time, but something far colder. Regret. Once, when gods cried out in defiance, the God-Slayer had felt purpose. There was clarity in destruction, an order to the chaos they wrought. But now, as they stood in a universe that no longer fought back, they found no purpose at all. Only silence. And silence, the kind that stretches between stars, can break even the mightiest. As they stood there, a wind, born from the dying breath of the planet, swept across the ruins, carrying with it fragments of ancient prayers. The God-Slayer listened. They had not listened before. Why would a destroyer listen to the cries of the dying? Yet now, those fading voices struck something deep within, something almost forgotten. It was faint at first, like a heartbeat buried beneath mountains of dust. A feeling, an echo of what they once were. For no one is born a God-Slayer. There was a time, long before the wars, when they had been something else. Someone else. A protector, perhaps. A believer. A being who looked up to the stars and saw hope rather than targets. But that memory was gone, consumed by eons of blood and fire. Still, the faint pulse of that forgotten self flickered within the void of their being. They raised their hand, massive, ancient, trembling, and pressed it against their own chest. No heartbeat, no warmth, just emptiness. And that was when the tear fell. Only one. A single drop of liquid starlight, trailing down a face that the cosmos itself feared to look upon. It hit the ground, sizzling softly, and where it landed something extraordinary happened. Grass. A single fragile blade of green grew from the ash. The God-Slayer froze. They stared at the impossible thing before them, the first sign of life in a dead world. It was small, meaningless in scale, yet it pulsed with warmth. Life. Hope. Defiance. They reached down, enormous fingers trembling as they brushed against it. The grass bent, but did not break. And then faintly, like a voice carried on starlight from another corner of the cosmos, they heard something. It was not divine, not celestial, not powerful. It was human. A whisper, gentle and mortal. Who are you? The God-Slayer turned sharply, scanning the horizon. There was no one there, only endless ruin, shadows, dust. But the voice came again, soft, curious, alive. Why are you crying? The sound pierced deeper than any blade ever had, because no one had ever asked that before. No god, no soldier, no soul had ever questioned their sorrow. And though they had no mouth, no words, the God-Slayer wanted, desperately, to answer. In that moment, somewhere far away, on a small blue world tucked into an insignificant galaxy, a human awoke with a start. Their chest was heavy, their eyes wet with tears they didn't understand. They had dreamed of a giant in the stars, alone, kneeling, weeping, and they had spoken to it without meaning to. The connection had been made. The silence between worlds was broken. The dream returned the next night. The human, whose name was Aaron, had never been one for faith. They lived an ordinary life on an ordinary world orbiting a dim yellow sun. Their planet had no gods, no miracles, no sacred texts. It had only people trying to survive, scraping meaning from the dust of history. And yet, when Aaron closed their eyes, they saw them. The being from the stars. The one who knelt among the ruins of dying worlds. The one whose tears burned brighter than the sun's. In the dream, the cosmos stretched around Aaron like an ocean of ink. The stars pulsed faintly, distant and cold. And at the center of that darkness sat the God-Slayer, their massive form hunched in silence, as though the weight of creation itself had bent their shoulders. Aaron could feel their sorrow. It was like standing beside a collapsing star, beautiful, crushing, infinite. They took a hesitant step forward. Despite the distance, despite the scale, despite the impossible gulf between a mortal and a cosmic being, the God-Slayer noticed. Their head turned, slow and deliberate, the glow of their eyes shifting to meet Aaron's. It was not the look of a conqueror, not a destroyer. It was the gaze of something that had seen too much, someone who no longer believed they deserved to exist. Aaron wanted to speak, but the words caught in their throat. Still, something compelled them. The same voice that had escaped them in the last dream rose again, unbidden, trembling, yet brave. Why are you crying? The silence that followed felt eternal. And then, sound. Not words, not exactly. More like emotion translated into resonance, a vibration through the void carrying sorrow too vast for language. It rippled through Aaron's bones, through their heartbeat, through the very atoms of their being. I do not know, the voice finally came. It was like hearing thunder mourn. Aaron's knees weakened. They fell onto the unseen ground between stars, their mortal body trembling under the gravity of that voice. But they forced themselves up, breath ragged, and said softly, "Then, maybe I can help you find out." For a moment, nothing happened. The God-Slayer's immense shadow loomed, a wall of living night. Then the darkness shifted, just slightly, and a single fingertip the size of a mountain lowered toward them. It stopped mere inches away, radiating the cold of unlit galaxies. To Aaron's astonishment, they were not afraid. They reached out and placed their small, fragile hand upon that cosmic surface. The instant their skin made contact, light burst between them. Not violent, but pure, warm, alive. The dream dissolved. Aaron woke with a gasp. The room was dark, but not silent. Their heart thundered in their chest like a living drumbeat, and the air shimmered faintly, just for a second, as though the stars themselves had bent closer to listen. They sat up, trembling, staring at their hands. A faint glow lingered along their fingertips, fading as dawn crept in through the window. It was impossible, and yet deep down Aaron knew. The dream had not been a dream. It had been a meeting. That night, the God-Slayer knelt again in the ruins of the silent world. Something had changed. The voice they'd heard, small, soft, human, echoed through their mind like the faintest melody. For the first time in millennia, the silence of the cosmos was not complete. They looked down at the small patch of grass that had grown where their tear had fallen. It had multiplied. The green spread like courage, pushing through the ash and ruin, defying death itself. The God-Slayer extended a trembling hand toward it. This time the air shimmered. A vision, brief, fragile, flashed through their mind. A small room, a human sleeping, the warmth of a heartbeat. And then, as if the universe had remembered how to breathe, the stars above flickered to life again. Not many, just a few, but enough to break the darkness. Aaron began to dream every night after that. Each time, the distance between them and the God-Slayer lessened. The void grew smaller, the stars brighter. Sometimes they would talk, not with words, but with feelings, thoughts exchanged through light and shadow. Aaron saw flashes of the past, the wars of gods, the burning skies, the collapse of entire realities beneath the God-Slayer's hand. They saw the loneliness that followed, the endless wandering, the curse of immortality without meaning. And the God-Slayer saw Aaron's world, its fragility, its warmth, the way humans laughed and cried and held each other despite knowing they would die. To a being who had witnessed eternity, it was a kind of power the cosmos had forgotten, the strength to care. Over countless nights, something impossible began to grow between them. Connection. On the 7th night, Aaron asked softly, "Did you ever love something?" The God-Slayer's eyes dimmed, the cosmos trembling as if old memories stirred. Then came the answer, slow, broken, honest. "Yes, once. I loved the light." Aaron tilted their head. "And what happened to it?" "I destroyed it." Silence, heavy, painful, final. But Aaron didn't recoil. They didn't flee. Instead, they stepped forward and said the most human thing the cosmos had ever heard. "Then learn to love it again." The God-Slayer froze. The words struck deeper than any divine weapon had ever managed. Love it again? Could one rebuild what one had erased? Could something so vast and broken rediscover beauty in the small, the fleeting, the mortal? And for the first time since the birth of time itself, the God-Slayer hoped. It was faint, a flicker, a heartbeat, but it was there. That hope rippled outward. Across galaxies long thought dead, faint lights flickered in the void. Planets whose suns had gone cold glowed again, faintly, like old embers remembering the warmth of a fire. And on one of those worlds, a blade forged from a dying universe, once the symbol of destruction, cracked. Light bled from the fissures. The God-Slayer looked down at it. The weapon that had ended gods was breaking, because they no longer believed in what it represented. They let it fall. The sound of it striking the earth echoed through every plane of reality. And somewhere, far away, a human woke once more, heart pounding, eyes wet, feeling the universe shift around them. The God-Slayer was changing, and so was everything else. The night the stars began to speak again, the universe itself seemed to hesitate, as though uncertain it was allowed to feel alive once more. For so long the heavens had been mute, constellations dimmed to memory, prayers dissolved into static. But then, across the deep expanse of space, light pulsed, weakly at first, then stronger. Not the cold fire of distant suns, but something more deliberate, a pattern, a rhythm. It was language. Aaron was the first to notice. They woke not from a dream this time, but from light. The room glowed with shifting constellations projected through the window, rearranging themselves in real time. Their hands trembled as they reached for the glass. Outside, the sky looked alive. The stars flickered in strange synchrony, forming geometric shapes that dissolved as quickly as they appeared. It wasn't random. It was a message. When Aaron blinked, a whisper touched their mind. Soft, immense, infinite. "Can you see them?" They froze. "See who?" "The stars. They are answering." The voice was unmistakable. The God-Slayer. But something about them was different. Their tone, once like thunder rolling through the void, was quieter now, warmer, almost human. Aaron's pulse raced. "They're moving, forming words. Are you doing that?" A pause, then, "No, I think they're doing it themselves." The realization sent chills through both mortal and cosmic minds alike. The stars were awakening, not by divine command, but by resonance. The God-Slayer's change, their newfound empathy, was reverberating across creation. Life, sentient or not, was responding. Across galaxies, long-dormant worlds began to stir. On the ruins of divine temples, light pooled like water, flowing into symbols forgotten by time. The remnants of dead suns pulsed faintly, as though remembering old songs. Nebulae formed shapes, faces, eyes, whispers of emotion. Even the vacuum between stars shimmered with something impossible to describe. Presence. The universe was remembering itself. And at the center of it all stood the God-Slayer, gazing at the reborn sky. They no longer knelt among ruins. They stood upright, tall and uncertain, like a creature learning to walk again. The glow in their chest, once cold and inert, now pulsed with steady rhythm. A mimicry of a heart. For the first time in eternity, the God-Slayer smiled. It was faint, brief, and hidden beneath layers of starlight armor, but it was real. Aaron felt the shift in their bones. They spent every waking hour beneath the night sky, tracing the constellations that changed with each passing evening. Each pattern told a fragment of a story, a war forgotten, a life reborn, a promise remade. And every night, when they closed their eyes, the connection returned, clearer now. They stood beside the God-Slayer once more, though this time the void around them wasn't silent. It shimmered with color, with sound, with life. "I didn't know the stars could speak," Aaron said, voice hushed in awe. "They couldn't," the God-Slayer replied. "Not until now. Not until you reminded me that silence was never strength." Aaron looked up. "Is that why you destroyed them? The gods?" The God-Slayer's gaze dimmed, filled with a sadness older than galaxies. "They forgot what it meant to listen. They demanded worship but not truth. They gave light but hoarded warmth. I ended them, because I believed creation would be freer without them. And was it? The question hung between them, fragile as glass. No, the God-Slayer finally said. It became empty. I became empty. Aaron nodded slowly. Then maybe creation doesn't need gods or worship. It just needs compassion, even from something like you. Something like me? A being who can destroy stars but still mourns for them. The God-Slayer turned toward them. In the endless dark, they looked impossibly vast, yet their voice trembled when they spoke. You're kind, they said softly. You are small, fragile, and bound to time, and yet you carry hope as if it were eternal. I have unmade galaxies seeking something that you were born with. What's that? Meaning. The connection deepened that night. Aaron's dreams became more vivid, their senses merging with the God-Slayer's perception. They saw through cosmic eyes, the birth of stars, the death of gods, the long, cold aftermath. But alongside that vision came warmth, the pulse of a heartbeat not their own. The God-Slayer had begun to feel again. Across creation, more signs emerged. A nebula shaped like an open hand. A moon glowing faintly with symbols of unity. Waves of light that synchronized across entire galaxies like a single cosmic breath. It was as though the universe was thanking them, both of them, for remembering what connection meant. The stars spoke not in words, but in emotion, waves of color and vibration. Joy, relief, forgiveness. For eons, the God-Slayer had believed the universe feared them. But now, standing beneath that endless choir of light, they realized something profound. The universe had only ever wanted them to heal. Aaron's voice broke the silence. If the stars are speaking, what are they saying now? The God-Slayer tilted their head, eyes shimmering. They say, "Welcome back." Aaron smiled, tears in their eyes. Then you were never truly alone. I was, the God-Slayer said quietly, until you. The words carried the weight of galaxies, and yet they sounded almost human. Aaron reached forward, no longer afraid, and this time, the God-Slayer knelt willingly, lowering their massive hand so that Aaron could rest their palm against it. The warmth that passed between them was unlike anything the cosmos had felt before. Divine and mortal, infinite and fragile, merging for a heartbeat. In that moment, something inside both of them shifted. A pulse, a spark. The birth of a bond strong enough to defy oblivion. The stars above flared in unison. Far beyond, ancient remnants of divine consciousness stirred within the void. Not gods reborn, but fragments, echoes, drawn to the light of something new. They felt it too, the return of harmony. And though they no longer possessed form or name, even the ghosts of deities whispered one word into the ether: hope. The day the stars spoke back was the day the God-Slayer's legend changed forever. No longer a tale of destruction, but of resurrection. Not of fear, but of compassion. The destroyer of gods had become the one who listened, and the universe, for the first time in countless ages, listened back. The universe held its breath. For the first time since the dawn of creation, silence no longer felt empty. It felt pregnant, alive with meaning, brimming with anticipation. The stars whispered softly, as if waiting for something immense, something final, something beautiful to unfold. At the heart of all that cosmic light stood two figures, one infinite, one impossibly small. The God-Slayer and the human. They had met countless times now, across dreams and voids and fragments of eternity, yet this meeting was different. The void around them glowed not with the cold fire of dying suns, but with something new, warmth, the kind that belongs not to gods or cosmic entities, but to life itself. The God-Slayer looked down at Aaron, their massive form haloed by the shimmer of 1,000 galaxies. Where once their eyes burned with destructive energy, now they glowed with gentle radiance. There was power still, yes, but softened by understanding. You've changed the stars, Aaron said quietly, their voice trembling. They shine differently now. The God-Slayer tilted their head. No, they said softly. We changed them. Aaron smiled faintly. I'm not powerful enough to change the cosmos. The God-Slayer's gaze softened. You underestimate what small things can do. All around them, the heavens began to tremble. The stars pulsed faster, as though the entire fabric of reality were resonating to a heartbeat. The God-Slayer looked up, and the infinite lights reflected in their armor began to swirl, coalescing into spirals of radiant dust and luminous storm. Something was happening, something that had not occurred since before the first god was born. Creation itself was stirring. Why are they doing that? Aaron asked, awe and fear mingling in their voice. The God-Slayer's tone was reverent, almost childlike. Because they are remembering how to be. The stars are rewriting themselves. And then quietly, they added, they are following your example. My example? You cared, said the God-Slayer, voice thick with emotion. When all others feared me, you offered compassion. You reached across the void. You taught me that even destruction can learn mercy. Aaron's eyes filled with tears. I didn't teach you that. You already had it in you, you just forgot. The God-Slayer paused, their immense hand curling slowly, contemplatively. Then perhaps we both remembered together. The universe began to sing. There is no word in any language, human, divine, or cosmic, that can describe it. It was a sound and a light and a feeling all at once. Every star, every atom, every mote of dust vibrated with the same frequency, the frequency of renewal. The God-Slayer felt something stirring deep within. The same force that had driven them to destroy now surged to create. For the first time, they resisted it not in fear, but in acceptance. A single tear formed in their eye, not of sorrow this time, but of release. When it fell, it did not burn. It blossomed. The droplet descended through the void, glowing brighter with each moment, until it burst like a miniature supernova, an explosion of color, warmth, and light. Nebulae spiraled out from it, birthing new suns, new worlds, new possibilities. Aaron shielded their eyes as the light engulfed them, yet within that brilliance they saw visions. Planets awakening, oceans roaring to life, flowers blooming on worlds that had forgotten what it meant to bloom. Life was returning. Everywhere that the tear's light reached, the universe renewed itself. Stars that had long gone dark flickered back to life. Dead galaxies glowed once more. Even the cold, forgotten corners of existence warmed under its radiance. It was as if the universe had been waiting, not for gods to return, but for a single act of compassion to reignite its heart. The God-Slayer sank to their knees, overcome by what they had unleashed. Aaron stepped forward, reaching out as they always had, placing their small human hand upon the vast, starlit chest before them. You didn't destroy creation, Aaron whispered. You were preparing it for this. I don't understand, the God-Slayer said, their voice trembling. You unmade what was broken, so something better could grow. The being's form flickered, part divine, part mortal now, as if the act of creation itself had changed their nature. Their once terrifying armor softened into radiant dust, revealing glimpses of a face, neither man nor woman, neither alien nor familiar. It was a face of sorrow, rebirth, and grace. I am no longer the God-Slayer, they murmured. No, Aaron said gently, smiling through tears. You're something new. What am I then? Aaron looked around at the newborn stars, the fresh galaxies swirling with color and life, and said softly, You're the first to cry and the first to forgive. You're the tear that recreated the heavens. The title hung in the air like sacred light. The cosmos seemed to echo it, the tear that recreated the heavens. And for the first time in eternity, The God-Slayer, no, the Creator reborn, laughed. It was quiet, warm, and profoundly human. Far beyond them, the stars continued their song. Civilizations yet unborn would someday look to the sky and see constellations shaped like two figures, one vast and luminous, one small and fragile, standing side by side. They would weave myths of the night the stars returned, of how compassion between the infinite and the mortal restored existence itself. And somewhere, within the great cosmic rhythm, two hearts, one human, one celestial, beat in perfect unison. Eons later, on a quiet planet orbiting one of the newborn suns, a child would ask their parent, "Who made the stars cry?" And the parent would smile, look up at the sky shimmering with eternal light and say, "No one made them cry, little one. Someone taught them."